Good evening. This week, we want to welcome you to Blacklight on Sports. I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald,
I'm Charles Hallman.
and today our guest is a Hall of Famer,
Yes.
former athlete, uh, motivational speaker, community organizer, and educator.
Right.
So we'd like to welcome Onika Nicole Craven to the show.
Well, thank you. It's definitely a blessing to be here with two old friends of mine, Mr. Hallman and Mitch. When you asked me to come through, I couldn't say no to you. Right. Yeah. So we here up and made a day for this to. I've been looking forward to it for like a month now. So I'm ready
Okay.
to get into it.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about your journey. Talk about what you're doing. Talk about what you're doing now, and then talk about your journey on how you got there.
Yeah, right now I just finished up a movie as an executive producer and a project manager on a movie called Package Deal, and I think we're in the process of changing that. But right now, we just wrapped up a week ago,
Mhm.
so hopefully with the editing, it should be out on streaming in a few of the local theaters around Thanksgiving. It was my first time being an executive producer on a film. The guys who wrote it aren't from Minnesota, but they've been here enough
Mhm.
long, and they have four. This will be their fourth movie that they've produced and made here in the state of Minnesota. We always hire people from the area.
Mhm.
Um, the two young men is Malik Pierre and Trey Bell. They were a singing group called VIP Bad Boys,
Mhm.
and so now they went into doing movies and stuff. And they have a distribution company in, I think it's in Florida, called Maverick.
Mhm.
So a lot of their films the money comes through them. So in all of their films that they've done, I've been a part of three of the four.
Now, what is the movie about?
It's about a woman who, after a couple of years, is going into dating new people, and she has two kids, two teenagers, and she's letting these guys know that it's a package deal, And there's some twists, there's some little turns in it. Zany K, you
Mhm.
guys remember Zany, the old radio station guy? He flew in. He has a major part in it. Danielle Klein is a wonderful actor. When you get a chance to see her on the screen, she just blossoms, a beautiful woman. But she just takes that character as a mother, just trying to protect her family. And so to be able to be at the beginning, this was the first film that I've been on from beginning to end. Because as an actor, I would come in, do my part, but this is from day one to the end. I was a part of that.
Now, now, how did you get involved with that?
Um,
With that?
well, because I knew Trey and Malik through their music, and so then they were saying, "Hey, we're getting into movies. You want to be a part of it?" And so the first couple of I just did some extra roles, and then on this last one, I was just like, I want to be an executive, or I was just thinking about a producer. And when they came back, they said, "Well, why don't you be an executive producer?" So we worked that out, and then on there, I was the project manager, so making sure that I was able to cast
Mhm.
some of the people that worked in it, find areas where we could film. There's a couple of days that I actually got to not necessarily direct, but kind of show like this would be better if you did X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
So, like I said, to be a part of the beginning to the end, I'm really looking for it. And I actually did a small role in this one. Usually, I don't speak in there. You guys are an extra. I just like to come in. I mean, I did 4 years in LA in the early 2000s, and now I want to be behind the scene, being a part of their project and still working on a couple of the things that I've wrote and that I'm working on trying to get in the theater as well.
Okay.
So what? So what made you decide that acting was something that you wanted to pursue? I mean, you've been in sports in all phases, educator as well, but but acting is a totally different animal. So was it because you was out in L.A. and that's what got you in it, or what got you in it? Go ahead.
No, as an athlete, I always would go to some of the high school and elementary plays, but because I was into sports, I never really got into it. It
Mhm.
just took too much time. And when I was in, I think no, I was in seventh grade. A teacher asked if we were going to do in civics, we were going to do a little skit and then go to the another elementary school to do it. and it was about a small group of gangs. It was a gang, and they needed a leader. And so what they had to do was they were trying to recruit new people. And so the gang leader had the new person that was trying to recruit. He had to go to an old folks home and pull the fire alarm. And so I ended up getting the lead in that part, and I fell in love with it, and everybody that watched it said I did really well, but because of sports I never really had an opportunity to do it. And then after I graduated, I got my degree in psychology, and my mom's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be an actress. It kind of threw her. But, and then like a year and a half later, I have a friend of mine from college. She said, well, if you want to pursue this, even at, 22, 23-year old, which is a little late for being an actor, your first try at it. I did a whole year and a half here, got an agent, booked a couple of things, local stuff here, and then I went out to LA. And like I said, I was out there 4 years. I was on extra roles on George Clooney's movie. I was on The West Wing, Hot Chicks. If you watch the very end of that, you'll see me for like a couple of seconds. And I did a couple of music videos and stuff. And as a starving artist, that's what I wanted to do. And I just never made it big. So after 4 years, I moved back, but I did a couple of local plays here. Tamika Harris was looking for some actors, and I was like, "Is this still what I want to do?" Sat down with her, and she allowed me to be an associate director on Mama Don't Take No Mess. And she's like, "You can just do directing or be a part of it," and I just fell in love with it. And so after a couple of years, I think Charles, we had a production company. Remember with Mark Foley, we had our own production company for a while, and I did the writing for a commercial for Mark's company. And then after a while, it's just like I just want to step back and do the writing. So it kind of went from that, from being in front of the camera to I enjoy being in the background of it. So that's kind of how I started writing my own stuff. I have about 3 or 4 full features right now that's just waiting for the right time and the right money and the Lord's will to open up these doors. And so that's what I want to do now.
So go ahead, Joe.
So you mentioned earlier about your film that you're just working on now will be available to be streamed and also in the theater. Has streaming become that new avenue or the most available avenue for Black artists, Black directors, Black filmmakers to be able to get their work in even quicker than hoping that somebody come and pick them up and give them a wide distribution or even a short distribution?
Absolutely, because with streaming, you don't need the big dollars, the big marketing to be able to do a film. I mean, you can do a full feature film just on your cell phone. They have the technology to do it. I think what you going straight to stream, it gives you an opportunity to get your name out there. So then, if something big does happen, then Hollywood can call you. But at this point, I mean, these VIP bad boys, this is their fourth film, right? And so they continue to get better. They have a production company. They have the distribution. We're able to get people of color, which is when you're in LA, everybody's fighting to get those small roles. I mean, when I was out there, you go to one audition that might have somebody for one Black actor, and it's everybody out there. You're sitting there like, there's no way I'm gonna get that. But now you have people that are like, I can do this myself. There's guys that we knew growing up who are doing their thing and winning awards and just local, and you wouldn't have that opportunity to go out to Hollywood and do it. It's easier. You'll see some movies on Tubi are like not too good, but then you do have Prime and you do have Netflix, and so people are going straight to them, and more people are able to see your work and to build up a resume that you wouldn't be able to. Like I was in LA and I did most of my work was extra work. I did a couple of independent films, but that was over 4 years, and these guys got 4 movies in 4 years, right? And so that's just not realistic for especially people of color in the BIPOC community. Now you can tell stories that affect you and not have somebody else say, well, this is what we think about African American. You're always drug dealers, you're always this and that. I'm like, no, we're multifaceted individuals, right?
So I guess what you're saying now is that it's with the streaming, it's a lot, it's a lot easier. It doesn't have to go to the theater. You can put it online and you can be exposed
Absolutely.
already.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like our, to be a superstar. And we're like, this is an influencer on TikTok. And you're like, that would never happen 20 years ago, right? These young people that are on these social medias are making millions and millions of dollars, just doing a TV show, but on their phone or whatever. And so with streaming, depending on who you go with, there's ways to make money off of that now than before you wouldn't even have a chance. And so it gives more people an opportunity to get in front of the camera and figure out what it is that you want to do, and you put it out there, and if it doesn't go well, you still have that part of your resume.
So that's more of a benefit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So define what's the difference between a producer and an executive producer.
So a producer is just one who's on set, and you can bring casting people in. The executive producer is the one with the money, right? They're the ones that make the difference on a project. And so to be able to put money on a film, and then the way you could schedule your contract is that once the movie gets out there, and if you make money by being a producer, an executive producer, you can make your money back. But you also get to say who the directors are, who's casting in it. So you have more of a say as an executive producer than just a producer on a movie.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But let's go back to, you wasn't always an actor.
Right.
You wasn't always a producer. You was a prep player locally. So talk about just that journey of playing sports in the Twin Cities. Playing a sport that's often not looked at, especially for Black females, not looked at as being, something that be parlayed into college or be parlayed to now we have WNBA, but when you was growing up, there wasn't that existed.
Right. And then on top of that, you ended up a Hall of Famer. So yeah, talk about your prep journey and how that led to.
Absolutely. So as a kid, I grew up in I was born in 71, and in the early 80s and 90s, there were no true female basketball people that we could look up to. When we went to the park, it was all boys, right? So you would go to the park and you would try to emulate the Magic Johnsons. That was my idol from, Charles knows I love me Magic, right? And so the Michael Jordans, depending on where you grew up. And so it was always the boys around. And so instead of just, at that time, our kids were outside playing something. If it was four corners, kickball, if you were playing basketball, you were always outside. So to be an athlete in that area, that's what you did. You went home, you took off your school clothes, you put on your play clothes, and then you wouldn't come back home until dinner time or when the street lights came on, right? And so I was able to get my skills together by playing with the boys. And as I was growing, 7th grade is when I started. 8th grade, 9th grade, I was actually a pretty decent player. But you have to practice. And I kind of went with my friends, and I didn't want to practice in the summer or when we weren't playing. So I would come to practice at the first part of November out of shape. My shot was off. And so in order to be able to play, which is the game I love, but I wasn't dedicated to it, like you got to put in time. There's nothing you can just go in and be like, I'm good at it, I'm not going to practice it, regardless of what it is, right? And so then I found my skills deteriorate as far as scoring. There's articles of me scoring when I played against North, I had 22 points, right? And I could average that, but I just didn't do it, put in the work. So, but in order for me to be able to play, I had to figure out another way of being on the court. So that meant I was still quick enough to be able to run up and down the court. So I just started to defender. I was one of the top defenders. I could rebound for my age or for my height. And so that got me from being at Henry High School. Then we moved over south and I ended up at Washburn, graduated. I went to St. Cloud State for a year, but I think it was Prop 48 where you had to have a certain grade point average on the ACT.
Yep.
At the time, I had a 15 and they wanted an 18. And the first 2 weeks, I was busting them girls up. I'm like, I'm going to walk on. And I remember the coach calling me in, and I was like, oh, she's about to offer me a scholarship. And she's like, yeah, you can't play. And I was like, what? And that was what that is. And so I had to take that whole year off, figure out what I wanted to do. And then at junior college, the coach called me and said, hey, do you want to come to Rainy River, which is where I got my Hall of Fame? And he said, you can come up now. This was the end of November. You don't have to worry about an ACT for a junior college. And I talked to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I'm no quitter. I'm not going to just leave school because I was not able to play here. So I waited till that following year, went up to Rainey, We went to state both years. We lost in the championship to Anoka Ramsey. And then I left Rainy River and ended up at Morris and played my last 2 years there. And then recently in 2023, I was inducted into the Rainy River Hall of Fame. Not necessarily for basketball. It was called Professional Excellence because with all the stuff that I've done since leaving school. I do believe in a couple years, my team as a whole, players that Daphne Walker was one of my teammates, right? So as a team, I think we'll be in a couple years. But because I'm a writer, because I started my own nonprofit, because I was an actress, we did media stuff with MSR and all the other things that I did after leaving Rainy River. That was the reason I was able to become a Hall of Famer on top of the basketball as well.
No. After that, you worked Clyde Turner's camp, right?
Well, I didn't necessarily work Clyde. I actually was a camper first.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I want you to
Yeah.
I want you to talk
Yeah.
about your experience with that and how you developed into a camp counselor.
Yeah. So my junior year when I moved from Henry High School to Washburn, Brown, I think was his last name, had a guy I met that went to Henry, had told me about a camp that was going to be at Washburn every year. That a guy named Clyde Turner had a camp, and if I wanted to be a part of it. So, of course, it was down the street from the house, and I went in there, and they had counselors from the U and all. I think there were players that played overseas that came back, and I'm like, wow, this is the skills that this is what I tell people, the skills that I've learned at Clyde Turner with those counselors are for free, right? Because we didn't have to pay anything or a low fee if you could. Was the same skills or even better than I got with my high school friends that went to the U that paid $400 for that same week. I was doing skills like this is what we did, and they were like, we didn't even do that, and we paid all this money, right? And so I was like, then this is where I need to be. And so then after 2 years of playing as a camp person at Clyde, the following year when I graduated high school, he's like, hey, do you want to be a counselor? Absolutely, give back to where that gave me this opportunity. And those weeks that I actually played at Clyde Turner was the only 2 weeks or so that I actually practiced during the summer. And what was fun for me is when we went when we went out for the night camps.
Annandale.
Yeah, Annandale. I mean, that was the first time that most of us had even been out of the Twin Cities area, away from our parents. And so to be able to wake up at 6:30, eat breakfast, and then play basketball all day long, that was wonderful to me. And so I wanted to see what it was like to be a counselor. And so I would do camp as a counselor. I was commissioner a couple of times, throughout the career. Until Clyde passed away, I was a camp counselor. I thought it was important that we, as the people that came through the camp, always gave back to the young kids, because the older people that play basketball throughout Minneapolis always came back. There's not probably a kid that in the last 20 years that didn't go through camp that didn't come back or had something to contribute, for the most part, to Clyde and what he's done. And at his funeral, one of the things I said, and I fought to be able to speak because they just wanted certain people. And I'm like, no, you need people from the camp, is that we need to continue that tradition. Somebody needs to be able to pick up that mantle, because there's still a lot of talent out there, but I don't think there's anybody that's like Clyde or ever will be.
Talk about your nonprofit foundation.
Yeah.
What influenced you to go that route? Because that's not an easy thing to start or to maintain.
Oh, you said you didn't lie on that one. It's called Onika's Angels, and at the time we were doing. I had started in May of 2020. At the time we were still in COVID, and so I was out of school. Like most of the people, we were shut down. And at the time, I was just making silly videos on Facebook, called The New Normal. And so then my last video that I was going to release, I held on to it because that was the day that George Floyd was killed. And that video went viral. And I'm like, this ain't no time for, doing a silly video. So I held on to it. And that whole week, people were talking about this video and what happened to George Floyd. And on Wednesday, that was when everything popped off on Lake Street. And Wednesday night and Thursday night, just seeing our city, just it, just blowing up like that, it did something to me. I have to be honest. One of the reasons that I started Onika's Angels was after that Wednesday and Thursday of everything burning up. I saw the TV screen and I recognized those places. I knew exactly where you saw an orange flame of a building, and I knew that was AutoZone on Lake Street, right? I knew exactly because I had been in those areas. I grew up on the north side, so I knew that Cub, and as well as the South Minneapolis. So those were areas that I was familiar with, and it hit me differently than the Rodney King riots in 91, a little different than the Baltimore war in 2015 after Freddie Gray, because I didn't know those areas. It hit me, it hurt to see that, but I didn't know that area. I felt bad for that community. But now it's 2020, and this is the places that I have frequently went to. And I thought about just going down there, and I wanted to see it myself. So when I drove down there that Friday morning, they had the National Guard out under the 55 or Hiawatha Bridge, but the other area across the street where there was an outside strip mall was on fire, like building after building. And one of the places was 7 Mile, which I had just went there like a month prior to get a wig for one of my new normal videos, right? And I was like, I was just here, I spend my money in this area. And the building after building was just burning up. There were no police officers, there was no fire trucks or anything by Friday, and they just let that area burn. And I went home and I thought about, um, honestly, I thought about an older gentleman that lives over north, who doesn't have a vehicle, who would walk to the Cub over north and get supplies that he needed and walk back home without a car. And I thought about the people in that area in both sides, Minneapolis, North and South, and St. Paul. And I thought, what are those people supposed to do without a vehicle or the bus that they do take? Now you have to find another place to get your essentials, just basic toilet paper, toothpaste, deodorant, whatever it is. And so after I left Lake Street, still smelling like smoke and watching that visual of those buildings burning, I sat in my room and I was like, I have to do something. I thought about that gentleman that I loved and respected, and I was like, seeing him now, where is he supposed to go? Where are people like that supposed to go get their stuff? And so I called some friends of mine. I'm like, I have 6 grand in my bank account right now, and I'm gonna go to the Target in St. Louis Park, and I'm gonna spend every dime and buy stuff. And if I have to knock on doors and say, "What is it that you need?" Here's toilet paper. Here's those essential things. And my friend was like, "No, go on Facebook, start a Venmo, a PayPal, and tell people that this is what you want to do, and I will find places for you to donate to." That day, I think that Friday, we got $500 and we did it again. And I went shopping for 6 days straight. And we found churches, community centers. We would just pull up and people would walk. They had people with tables that were just collecting food and essentials. And we just dropped stuff off. And so that's kind of how it started. None of us, there was 5 of us at the time. None of us had went to school for business or nonprofit or any of this. So we didn't really know what we were doing. I just remember writing on a notebook, okay, I got $30 from this person on Venmo. So I would take $30 and put it in there to make sure that the balanced out. And I was doing this just on paperwork. And after a while, we're like, we need a name. And so as a Christian, somebody that that was one of the first 5 angels said, well, let's name it Onika's Angels. And I kind of laughed, like, and then I realized, I'm like, there's a scripture in the Bible where Jesus asked his disciples, what do the people call me? And they're like, they call you the prophet, they call you this. And then I think it was Peter, if I'm not mistaken, he said that you're the son of God. You know what I mean? But you didn't get that. You got that from God. And I felt that when she said Onika's Angels. And I was just like, this is the name. And I wore my shirt today. And so my first check for Onika's Angels came in after a month of us just going out and saying, we're Onika's Angels, we want to help people. And I went to the bank and I was like, I want to deposit this. And he's like, yeah, you can't deposit that in your private account. You need, you need X, Y, and Z to be able to do it. And I called my friend Paul, who owns his own business. I'm like, what is this and that I have to do? And it was like trial and error. Just learning the business side of it. What is a nonprofit and how do you become a nonprofit? What can we write off? We have to get lawyers and insurance and all this stuff. And who can we, give money to and who can't we and all these things. And it was a learning experience, but all five of us who are on the board, we all have full-time jobs. And so it's tough. The thing that's interesting is, even though there's only five of us and we are, I think about stuff all the time. Like, oh, we should do a Easter get basket giveaway. I'm thinking 3 in the morning to get up at 6:30 to get ready for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot of work, but the need is out there. At the beginning, we had people coming from everywhere sending us money, and now it's like we have one young lady who donates to us often,
Mm-hmm.
and so we still try to make sure that if there's a need, you can get a hold of us at onikasangels.org, and tell us what it is. We do a lot of basic needs, immediate needs. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are moving into a new apartment and you need a $250 gift card for Walmart or Target, we can do that, to help you with some of your medical bills. We still do essentials. We got a $50,000 grant from Hennepin County, for food insecurities when we first started. So all that money just went to food, and we just had people call us, or we partnered with maybe 40 to 50 different organizations and nonprofits and profit, community people around the state. If there's a natural disaster, we try to reach out. So we help people in Iowa, Texas. We gave Christmas. We like to adopt families during the Christmas season, so that's our next big thing. We'll adopt 5 families or so, do the age grade. They ask us and tell us what they need. We ask them what they want. We give them toys and stuff for the kids, and we try to do that once a year. We do a big Thanksgiving dinner where we actually buy the turkey and all the fixings, a frozen turkey, and all they have to do is come and pick it up. And so I think the first time we did it, we served over 200 families. And so then, for Easter, we partnered with a homeless shelter in St. Paul, and we just gave gifts, and Easter baskets to the families at this place in St. Paul. And I mean, this is something that, I didn't know that, again, like with acting, it was just nothing that I thought I would ever do, because I was so busy doing all this other stuff. But the Lord has just like, this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, okay, Lord, as long as you have the people that have a need, then I'm going to do what I can to be able to supply it. And I had, like I said, it was something that we didn't know what we were doing. And by the grace of God, people that knew, about the business and how to run a nonprofit was able to come to us and say, hey, this is what you need to do. And they were open because we wanted to do it right. And so we didn't never get in trouble for doing anything wrong. It was the right time at the right place at the right time.
Now, how does that make you feel?
And honestly, if the Lord were to take me today, I know I did everything I could to be a hand to somebody else, right? I will give you the shirt on my back. And so for Onika's Angels to be able to partner with 30, 40, 50, even, different organizations and families, over 1,000 individuals that we've helped over the last 4 years, I couldn't ask for anything more. You know what I mean? It's about giving, and that's where my heart is. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I think Onika's Angels is exactly what we are. We come in to be able to provide for the people in the community. And there are a lot of people who are out there doing this every day, but there's still more need. And so I think that's the part that hurts me the most, is because we're so small. We just don't have the time to put 100% into it. But
Mm-hmm.
when something comes up, you're going to get everybody. And so we send out text messages all the time and say, hey, this is what I was thinking, or the people on the board will come in like, hey, there's a family that needs X, Y, and Z. Can we do it? Absolutely. We try not to turn anybody down.
Mm-hmm.
We try to help as many people as we can. Though, there are people who are trying to scam, and I'm like, Lord, that's not my thing to
Mm-hmm.
judge it. We're going to help as many people as we can. And even if there's 4 bad ones out of 5, if we touch that one individual that really needed the help, and then we did our job.
Now, how important do you think it is for people to see you, uh, a black woman, leading that type of charge? Because we don't see that often, and sometimes people stay in the background, but you kind of pushing yourself and your organization out there. How important do you think that is?
I think it's wonderful because I work in the Minneapolis school district, and there's a lot of young uh, kids of color who are struggling to find a positive role model, be it a male or a female. And so, for me to be, I'm a security monitor at a middle school, but if you come to my school, I have a board behind me, and I have pictures with me and Maya Moore. I have pictures with me and Bobby Joe Champion, and some of the things that I get to do, and a picture of my Hall of Fame and me with my Onika's Angels. And so the kids will come up and they'll ask me specific questions about some of the pictures that are on there. And they'll be like, man, Miss Onika, I thought you were just a security monitor. You know what I mean? And so to give them that motherly figure and that person who could be a role model to them at that same time, it's a wonderful experience to have those kids come to me and like, I did a speech at the school last year, and a kid was like, Miss Onika, I want to be an actress. But my mom said it was a dumb idea, and she didn't think I could do it. And to be able to see me do it, I'm like, so I showed them clips of me being on Hot Chicks, and they was like, "That's you, Miss Onika." And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I think as a black woman growing up in this area too. I mean, I didn't grow up in California. I grew up in streets of North Minneapolis, as a little girl, and for them to be able to see it, if they reach it, if they can see it, then they can do it. And that's part of the reason I started the program where I have you come in. I got to get Charles to come through. Sharing your gift, expanding my mind is that reason where I brought people of color into the schools of every type of occupation for our kids to be like, hey, this is stuff that people in our community are doing. Fire chiefs, actors, doctors in education. I had Natalie, the owner of the Black Film Festival, all these different athletes, that people that look like them, because I don't think the media or the society tells our kids that they can do anything they put their mind to. But they see me doing it, and I bring in my friends. I call myself the mini mayor because if you need anything, there's somebody that I know in connection with. And so to be able for our kids to see people of color be successful and come from this area, there's no, I can tell you, oh, this is how you do it, but to be able to see it, it gives that young girl or young boy the opportunity to believe in themselves that they can do it as well.
You're also the sports fan. So talk about the, the, the teams that you follow, why you are passionate about it. Is it just Minnesota teams, or is nationally? Just talk about.
First and foremost, I'm a Los Angeles Lakers fan. Always will be. Like I said, growing up, Magic Johnson was who I idolized because I mean, Cynthia Cynthia Miller, right? Is that her name? Miller. Uh,
Sure.
Cheryl Miller.
Cheryl Miller.
I mean, to be able to, I knew who she was, Lisa Leslie, but growing up as a little kid, it was the grown men in the NBA that we idolized. And so at that time, the Minnesota didn't have a team. I mean, we started off as the Minnesota Lakers, and then they got sold to LA. And so we didn't have a professional team here. And so the Lakers were that quick up and down. They were fast. It was, the fast pace. I think the battle between him and Larry Bird is what got me to wanting to play basketball. So that's first and foremost. But then, being a Minnesota girl, I love the Gophers and being able to be a part of MSR and go to, I mean, with that pass, I mean, I went to volleyball, swimming, it's for sports in general. I didn't care what it was. And so to be a part of that environment, and as a black woman, because when you would, as a media person, and Charles knows this, he's been in it for over 30 something years, 40, and they still the respect that a kid who's not of color can go into an environment and get more accolades and access than Charles would as a black man. And so now add that being a black woman, right? There were times when I remember vaguely, no, I remember, no, there was a time if Charles, you might remember this, we went to a Wild game and we were in the dressing room. You remember this? We were in the dressing room. Charles and I are the only people of color in that whole place. And the young man was coming around with the stats, and me and Charles are standing in the middle of the locker room, and young man went around us and gave stats to everybody around us. And we were like, excuse me. And I swear to right hand, he said, I didn't see y'all. Do you remember that? He said, yes. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, how do you not? And this is constant, and so it's being able to be in the front of people seeing us as we can do anything, just because the idea is white man as a media person to be able not to only to be a woman but a woman of color. We would go to events and we would make sure that our credentials are front and center, so when we go into places they know we're supposed to be there, but there would still be people that would look at it, flip it over to make sure it was real. Like, what are we doing? But you have a 4-year-old who has his daddy's badge on that can go into a locker room and you're sitting there like, what? You know what I mean? This is true. Charles would have to go in and get people, so they'd be like, this is my intern, this is somebody's working at the paper with me, she needs to have access to this. And I was like, I just seen a 4-year-old walk in there with his daddy's ID and you said nothing. And it's not, it wasn't a player's son, it was just another media person's son. So I think to see, and especially with the WNBA now, to see Black women being able to not only be coaches, we've always been part of the basketball arena, but now we're MGs or general managers, coaches, and now we have media people, and it's all women sometimes at some of the conferences that you see. And it's like, this is where we need to be, and just getting the opportunity. And again, it's about representation and for us to be able to be seen, so young girls who are growing up can say, this is what I want to be. If I'm not going to be that one athlete that's on the court, there's other things that you can do to be successful but still be a part of the game.
So that business card that you have, you got to have it flip over, right? You got so much stuff on it that you don't know how to put that on there. But if you could narrow all that down, what would you want to on your business card? What you want to come after your name?
Onika's Angels, because that's not about me. That's about serving other people. And then an educator, again, about giving to other people. And then third, I would think it would be probably actress, a producer, and in that order. That acting and all that stuff is something that fuels me. Of course, Christian is always going to be a top first part, but it would be Onika's Angels as a nonprofit, CEO of that, and then the public schools, and be able to work with our children, because I think they need to see that. And even some of the parents that come in, they're struggling, and they'll come in. My desk is literally, as soon as you walk in the door, there I am. When you go into the school, and to be able to see me, they're like, man, Miss Onika, it's so good to see you, and that makes me feel good, right? So we have a kid who's homeless and highly mobile, and no matter what kind of day I'm having, he'll come in. First thing, he'll find me. Doesn't matter if I'm talking to another staff person, if I'm sitting at my desk, or another student, he'll just come and he'll put his head on my shoulder, lean in. I give him a hug, tell him to have a good day, and he walks away. Breaks my heart, but every day that's what he needs, right? And so I'm glad that I'm able to be a part of that. And so being a part of the school district and being able to be with those kids that look like me, and just giving them an opportunity, and there's nothing like it.
So do you see yourself continuing what you are doing right now in the future, like everything? Or
Oh no, I'm old, man. I'm getting old. These bodies, I promise you, man. And I'm being honest. Like, I don't think, for real. I know you guys. It's funny, but I mean, I wake up, if I have a day off and I don't have to do anything, man. I go from the bed to the shower to the couch, right? Because I'm so busy. But if I could do, if I had to pick two, I would still do Onika's Angel Arts School for singing, dancing, and acting. And I want to do it over North. And so if I could do that with my mom's name on it, I think that would be the icing of the cake. And so that would probably be my education part, is being able to give the kids something that.
So what would the school be called?
My mom's name is Jocelyn Wallace. So it would be Jocelyn Wallace, the School of Arts. She don't know that. She does now, though. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she'll approve.
Yeah,
She'll
yeah,
probably
yeah,
be real happy that you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
name your school after her.
Yeah. So so that's something I've been thinking about for a while, but with the finances, so that'll still be, helping the kids in my community. So that's what I want to do.
Well, usually um, at the end of our show, we usually give our guests a chance to say something maybe that, talk about something maybe that we haven't talked about. Maybe some words of wisdom. It could be, I mean, you don't have to have it, but something maybe you might want to give some advice to people that might want to take the path that you've taken, or anything that you'd want to say to inspire the listeners.
Absolutely. My thing is find something that you love to do and do it. Don't let anybody or anything or even your fears stop you from being the best that you can be. Um, as of all the things that are on my plate, there's never been a day that I tell myself that I can't do it. Even though there might be some haters out there, but that just gives me the courage to want to do it more. But at the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself. Don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the fame. If you want to start a business, you want to write a book, do it. It's, I think, the reason most people fail is because they don't try. And so if I were to tell anybody, I'm like, give it a try, see what sticks. And you might not be one, like when I left to go to California, it was to be an actress. But I think I had to go through the good times and the bad, the hard times and everything, and move back to Minnesota to realize that being in front of the camera wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was actually the writing part, because I always wrote in my journal. But that trials and tribulations that I had to go through as a struggling artist allowed me to be like, now I can tell my story, tell stories of people of color, and be so that people don't just be like, this is what black people are, or this is what you're supposed to be. You can't be anything but X, Y, and Z. And living the life that I've lived and the people that I know, um, and finding one other person that can push you through. And most of the time, it's going to be yourself.
Well, want to thank you for stopping by, gracing us with your presence. Uh, really appreciate it. Loved everything that you said. Want to close it out. This is Blacklight on Sports. I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer-McDonald.
I'm Charles Hallman. Thank you for being with us, and please continue to read us in the paper every week, and we'll look to see you very soon.
Thank you.